The hydraulic fluid had pooled beneath the Caterpillar D8 for so long that it had stained the gravel black, like a wound that wouldn't close. Maya Reeves stood at the edge of that dark circle, her steel-toed boots just shy of the oil, and felt every eye in the Murphy construction yard boring into her back. "Go ahead," Rick Murphy said behind her, his voice carrying that particular tone men use when they're being generous with something worthless. "You get that old girl running, and I'll personally bow down and kiss your boots." Someone laughed, then someone else. Maya didn't turn around. She was looking at the Bulldozer, the way a surgeon might examine a patient everyone else had already written off. The machine had been sitting in this corner of the yard for 3 years. A 20-ton monument to failure. 2 mechanics from Chattanooga had tried and given up. Murphy had paid them $6,000 to essentially shrug and say the transmission was cooked, the engine was seized, and the whole thing should be sold for scrap. Maya had watched those mechanics work. Back when she'd first started at Murphy Construction 6 months ago, they'd arrived in a pristine truck with matching shirts and expensive diagnostic equipment. They'd spent 2 days poking around the Bulldozer, running tests, taking measurements. One of them had a tablet computer that supposedly could interface with the machine's ECU. The other had talked constantly about his certifications, his training, his years of experience. Neither one of them had bothered to get truly dirty. Neither one had crawled underneath the machine or pulled apart the engine with their own hands. They diagnosed from a distance, like doctors who refused to touch their patients. Maya had known then that they'd fail. Real mechanics didn't diagnose with tablets and theories. They diagnosed with their hands, their eyes, their ears, their noses. They got intimate with the machines. They listened to what the metal was trying to say. The morning air in Polk County, Tennessee, still held last night's coolness, but Maya could feel sweat beginning to form along her spine. Not from heat, from the weight of what she was about to attempt in front of 40 men who had spent the last 6 months treating her like a secretary who accidentally wandered into a construction site. She'd been the only woman on the crew since March. The first week, someone had left a pink hard hat on her locker. The second week, she'd found her tools rearranged every single day, wasting precious minutes each morning. The third week, Brad Murphy had asked her, loudly in front of everyone, if she needed help carrying a 40-pound compressor that she'd been carrying just fine on her own. Maya had learned to ignore it. She'd learned to arrive earlier than everyone else, to work harder, to never complain, to never show weakness. She'd learned that being twice as good meant you might be considered half as competent. She'd learned that in places like this, being a woman meant you were perpetually on trial, and the verdict was always pending. Her father would have understood. James Reeves had been a union auto mechanic in Detroit for 37 years before the plant closed, and he'd drunk himself to death. He'd taught Maya everything about engines when she was young, letting her hand him tools in their garage while he rebuilt transmissions and diagnosed electrical faults. "Listen to what the machine tells you," he'd say. "Metal speaks if you know how to hear it." He'd also taught her about fighting losing battles, about how the world changed and left certain kinds of people behind, about how dignity was something you had to fight for every single day, and sometimes you still lost. Maya had promised herself she'd be different. She'd be adaptable, resilient, unstoppable. She'd left Detroit at 19, pregnant and terrified, and had built a life through sheer force of will. Vocational school while working nights at a truck stop. Certifications earned one at a time. Paid for with money that should have gone to groceries, jobs in garages, on construction sites, anywhere that would hire a woman who knew her way around an engine, and then the divorce, and then the custody battle she couldn't afford to win. And then Emily, growing up in her father's house in Knoxville with his new wife, in a life that Maya could only visit on weekends. "I'll need 3 days," Maya said, finally turning to face Rick Murphy. He was standing with his arms crossed, flanked by his two sons, Brad and Connor, who wore identical expressions of amused skepticism. Behind them, most of the crew had found reasons to linger near the equipment shed instead of heading out to the highway project. Full access to the parts inventory, and nobody touches anything while I'm working. Rick's eyebrows went up. He was a big man, 62 years old, with hands like catcher's mitts, and a face that had been weathered by 4 decades of outdoor work. 3 days. Honey, professionals couldn't get her running in 3 weeks. I'm not asking for 3 weeks. And what do I get when you can't do it? When I've wasted 3 days of yard time? Maya had expected this. She'd planned for it, lying awake in her apartment the night before, running through scenarios, calculating risks. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the title to her 2015 Ford F-250. It was the only thing she owned outright, paid off 2 months ago after 5 years of careful budgeting, 5 years of choosing the truck payment over new clothes, over dinners out, over birthday presents for Emily that were more than just homemade cards and dollar store toys. The truck was worth maybe $18,000, not much to some people. To Maya, it was independence. It was the ability to get to work, to drive to Knoxville to see her daughter, to not be dependent on anyone else. It was the physical manifestation of 5 years of sacrifice. And she was about to bet it all on 72 hours and a broken machine. "You get this," she said, holding it up. "When I fail, you get my truck." The yard went quiet. Even the mockingbirds in the oak trees seemed to pause. Someone in the back of the crowd let out a low whistle. Rick Murphy's expression changed. The amusement vanished, replaced by something sharper. He stepped forward and took the title from her hand, examining it like he was checking for forgery. "You serious? Dead serious?" "Maya," Connor Murphy said, his voice tight. "You don't have to do this." She looked at him. Connor had always been different from his brother, quieter, more thoughtful. He'd never been outright cruel to her, but he'd never stood up for her either. Neutrality, she'd learned, was just another form of complicity. "Yes, I do," she said. "And if you somehow, by some miracle, get that machine running," Rick asked, "then you pay me what you would have paid those Chattanooga mechanics, $6,000, and you stop treating me like I'm only here because of some diversity quota." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Brad Murphy's face flushed red. He'd been the one to make that comment 2 weeks ago, thinking she was out of earshot. She hadn't been. He'd said it to one of the younger crew members, some 23-year-old kid fresh out of high school. "Companies just covering their ass, hiring her. Gotta have a woman on the books now, or the government comes sniffing around. She'll be gone in 6 months when she realizes this ain't a job for—" He hadn't finished the sentence. He'd seen Maya standing there, wrench in hand, having heard every word. Rick Murphy's expression changed. The amusement vanished, replaced by something sharper. He stepped forward and took the title from her hand, examining it like he was checking for forgery. "You serious? Dead serious. And if you somehow, by some miracle, get that machine running, then you pay me what you would have paid those Chattanooga mechanics, $6,000, and you stop treating me like I'm only here because of some diversity quota." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Brad Murphy's face flushed red. He'd been the one to make that comment 2 weeks ago, thinking she was out of earshot. She hadn't been. Rick looked at the bulldozer, then at Maya, then at the title in his hand. She could see him calculating. The machine was worthless as it sat. If she failed, which everyone clearly expected, he'd get a decent truck out of the deal. If she somehow succeeded, he'd get a working D8 that could handle the steeper terrain work they'd been subcontracting out. "All right," he said slowly. 3 days, starting now, but I want it documented. Brad, get your phone out. We're filming this whole thing. When she can't get it started, I don't want any excuses about not having the right parts or enough time." Maya nodded. She'd expected that too. "Fine by me." The crowd began to disperse, most of the crew heading to their trucks and equipment. The highway project 10 miles north wouldn't wait. But Brad stayed, his phone already out and recording. Connor lingered too, leaning against a nearby excavator with his arms crossed. Maya walked a slow circle around the bulldozer, her trained eye cataloguing the damage. The tracks were solid, that was good. Each link was intact, no cracks in the steel, which meant someone had maintained them properly before the machine died. The blade hydraulics were leaking but fixable. She could see 17 separate seat points where the seals had deteriorated, leaving trails of dried hydraulic fluid like rust-colored tears. The cab door hung at an angle, one hinge completely rusted through. Someone had tried to start it so many times that the battery cables had corroded into green-white sculptures of copper oxide, beautiful and useless. The engine side panels were still in place, but someone had removed half the bolts and never put them back. Amateur work, lazy work, the kind of shortcuts that mechanics took when they'd already given up but wanted to look like they'd tried. She climbed up onto the track and pulled herself into the cab. The seat had been destroyed by 3 Tennessee summers and winters, the vinyl split and bleeding yellow foam. Wasps had built a nest in the corner where the back window met the frame. The steering controls were locked, frozen in place by lack of use and accumulated rust. When she tried the ignition, there wasn't even a click. Completely dead. But that wasn't what had killed this machine. Maya leaned down and examined the floor of the cab. There, almost hidden beneath years of dirt and a wadded-up McDonald's bag, was a small puddle of brownish fluid. She touched it, rubbed it between her fingers and smelled it. Coolant, mixed with oil, the worst possible combination. "What was that?" Brad called from below, phone still raised. "Nothing yet." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. Coolant in the oil meant a breach between the cooling system and the lubrication system. In an engine this size, that usually meant one of 3 things: blown head gasket, cracked cylinder head, or, worst-case scenario, a cracked engine block. If it was the block, this machine was truly dead. No amount of welding or patching could fix a cracked block on a Detroit diesel this size. The stresses were too great, the metallurgy too specific. A cracked block meant the engine was scrap, and the entire machine was worthless except for parts. Maya felt her stomach tighten, but she pushed the fear down. She wouldn't know until she opened it up. No point in catastrophizing yet. She climbed down and moved to the engine compartment, unlatching the side panels. They came free with a screech of metal on metal, protesting years of being neglected. The Detroit diesel engine sat like a dead heart in the center of all that yellow metal. It was massive, 12 cylinders arranged in a V configuration, each cylinder the size of a coffee can. This engine, when healthy, produced 310 horsepower and enough torque to move a small building. It was designed to run for 20,000 hours between rebuilds, to work in conditions that would kill lesser machines, to be rebuilt and reused until the frame itself gave out. But this one had been murdered by neglect and contamination. Maya grabbed her flashlight from her belt and peered into the darkness between components. There, a crack in the cylinder head, barely visible. Coolant had been leaking into the oil system for months before someone finally shut the machine down. By then, the damage was done. The oil had been contaminated, turned into a sludge that couldn't lubricate, couldn't protect. The engine had essentially tried to run on wet cement. This was worse than a seized engine. This was an engine that had destroyed itself from the inside. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Chattanooga mechanics had been right to walk away. This wasn't a repair. This was a resurrection. "Find something?" Connor Murphy asked. He'd moved closer, genuinely curious despite himself. "Yeah," Maya said. She closed the engine panel and turned to face both brothers. Brad was still filming. "I found out why your daddy's professionals gave up." "You giving up too?" Brad asked, and there was hope in his voice. Maya thought about the truck title sitting in Rick Murphy's office. She thought about her apartment in Cleveland, Tennessee, 1 bedroom, $650 a month, with a water stain on the ceiling shaped like South America. She thought about her daughter Emily, 13 years old, living with her ex-husband in Knoxville because Maya couldn't afford a place big enough for them both. Couldn't afford the custody lawyer. Couldn't afford to be anything other than the weekend mom. She thought about being 41 years old with a high school diploma, a certification from a vocational school, and 15 years of experience that men like Rick Murphy refused to value. "No," Maya said. "I'm not giving up. I'm getting to work." She walked to her truck, possibly her truck for only 3 more days, and began pulling out her tools. The morning sun had burned off the coolness now, and the day was starting to heat up the way only a Tennessee June could. By noon, it would be 95 degrees in the shade. Maya didn't care. She had 72 hours to do the impossible. Behind her, she heard Connor say to his brother, "She's either the bravest person I've ever met or the dumbest." "My money's on dumb," Brad replied. Maya smiled to herself as she carried a heavy toolbox toward the bulldozer. Let them think what they wanted. In 3 days, they'd know the truth. The cylinder head would have to come off. The oil system would need to be completely flushed and cleaned. New gaskets, new seals, possibly new pistons if the cylinder walls were scored. And that was just the engine. After that, she'd have to address the hydraulics, the electrical system, the transmission that the professionals had declared dead. It was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Maya Reeves set down her toolbox and opened it. She selected a wrench, felt its familiar weight in her hand, and began to work. The first bolt came free after 5 minutes of steady pressure. The second took 10. By the time the lunch whistle blew across the yard, she had removed 37 bolts and was soaked with sweat. Nobody came to check on her progress. That was fine. She preferred it that way. As the sun climbed higher and the temperature pushed past 90, Maya worked with the focused intensity of someone who had everything to lose and nothing left to fall back on. The bulldozer's shadow shortened, then lengthened. Her hands became black with old oil and grime. By 6 o'clock, when the day shift ended and the workers returned to the yard, she had the cylinder head exposed. The damage was exactly as bad as she'd feared. The crack ran deep, and the metal around it was warped from heat stress. She could see where the coolant had been seeping through, contaminating the oil, turning it into a corrosive sludge that had slowly destroyed the engine from the inside. Rick Murphy walked over, surveying the scattered parts around the machine. Bolts organized by size in old coffee cans, gaskets laid out in the order they'd been removed, the cylinder head sitting on a piece of cardboard, its damage exposed to the fading light. "Making progress?" "Some," Maya said, not looking up from the engine. "You know what you're doing." Now she did look at him. Her hands were black with old oil. Her shirt was soaked through with sweat. Her back ached from bending over the engine bay for hours. "I know exactly what I'm doing." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "You got a place to sleep tonight?" "In my truck. There's a cot in the office. Bathroom's got a shower. You can use them if you want. Might as well be comfortable while you're attempting the impossible." It was the first generous thing he'd said to her that wasn't laced with condescension. Maya felt something loosen slightly in her chest. "Thanks." "Don't thank me yet. You still got 67 hours to pull off a miracle." He paused, looking at the disassembled engine. "Those Chattanooga boys said the block was cracked, said the whole thing was trash." "The block's fine. It's the cylinder head." "You sure?" "I'm sure." "Can it be fixed?" "Can be welded. Won't be pretty, but it'll hold if it's done right." Rick considered this. "You know anyone who can weld it right?" "Dale Pritchard over in Cleveland. He's done cylinder heads before. Problem is, he charges $800 for emergency work." "You got $800. I got $473. Rick reached for his wallet, but Maya held up her hand. "No, this is my bet. I do it with my resources." "Stubborn, determined." He put his wallet away. "All right, but that offer for the cot stands, and there's leftover pizza in the office fridge. You should eat something." He walked away, and Maya returned to the engine. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She turned on her work lights, LED floods she'd brought from home, and the harsh white glow washed out all the colors, turning the world into sharp shadows and bright metal. She worked until 9 o'clock, removing every bolt that held the cylinder head in place. There were 56 of them. Each one torqued to a specific pressure, each one now frozen in place by years of heat cycling and corrosion. Her hands cramped. Her socket wrench slipped twice, bloodying her knuckles. She didn't care. At 9:15, she finally lifted the cylinder head free. It weighed 70 pounds, and she had to use an engine hoist to get it out without dropping it. Once it was clear, she could see into the engine's heart, the pistons sitting in their cylinders, the camshaft, the valley where oil should have flowed, but had instead pooled into sludge. Maya set the cylinder head aside and climbed down from the machine. Her legs were shaking. She walked to her truck, retrieved her phone, and called Dale Pritchard. "Hello?" His voice was thick with sleep. "Dale, it's Maya Reeves. I'm sorry to call so late. What time is it?" 11 p.m. I've got an emergency." She heard rustling, the sound of someone sitting up in bed. "What kind of emergency?" "I need a cylinder head welded, tomorrow morning. Detroit diesel, 12-cylinder. Got a crack about 4 inches long with heat warping." There was a long pause. "Maya, that's not a simple weld. That's precision work. Takes time, special rod, preheating, post-heating. I'd need to do it in my shop with proper equipment." "I know. That's why I'm calling you. You're the only one within 50 miles who can do it right. It's gonna cost $800, and that's a friend price. I can give you $400 up front, the rest when I get paid." She paused. "If I get paid." "You're working on that dead cat at Murphy's, aren't you? Heard about your bet. News travels fast. Polk County's got 11,000 people and nothing to talk about except high school football and who's cheating on who. Of course it travels fast." He sighed. "All right, bring me the head first thing in the morning. I'll do it for $400 up front. You can pay me the rest later." "Dale, don't thank me. Just don't make me regret being nice. If you can't get that machine running and can't pay me, you'll owe me a favor. A big one. Deal." She hung up and sat in her truck for a moment, engine off, windows down, letting the night air cool her overheated skin. Crickets sang in the tall grass beyond the chain-link fence. Somewhere in the distance a train blew its horn, that lonesome sound that always made Maya think of leaving, of moving on, of running from problems instead of facing them. She pulled out her phone again and scrolled to Emily's number. It was too late to call. Her daughter would be asleep. But she opened their text thread and read the last message. "Love you, Mom. Can't wait to see you this weekend." That had been 3 days ago, before the bet. Before Maya had put everything on the line. She typed a response. "Love you too, baby. Everything's going to be better soon. I promise." She stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. She couldn't make promises she might not keep. Couldn't give Emily hope that might turn into another disappointment. Instead, she wrote, "Love you too. Sleep well." She sent it, put her phone away, and walked back to the Bulldozer. The work lights were still on, turning the corner of the yard into an island of harsh white light in an ocean of darkness. The cylinder head sat there, 70 pounds of cracked metal waiting to be saved or scrapped. 3 days. Everything she owned was riding on 3 days. Maya reached for her next tool and got back to work. The machine shop in Cleveland opened at 7 a.m., but Maya was there at 6:45, sitting in her truck with the engine running for the air conditioning, watching the owner, a man named Dale Pritchard, unlock the front door. She'd called him the night before, waking him up at 11 p.m. to ask if he could perform an emergency weld on a cracked cylinder head. He'd quoted her $800 and told her to be there first thing. She couldn't afford $800. Her checking account had $473 in it. Payday wasn't for another week. She hadn't slept. After working until 2 in the morning, she'd showered in the Murphy construction bathroom, standing under lukewarm water, watching oil and grime swirl down the drain, and collapsed on the cot Rick had set up for her. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crack in the cylinder head, saw the scored cylinder walls, saw her truck being towed away while she stood there helpless. At 4 a.m., she'd given up and gone back to work, using a wire brush to clean carbon deposits from the engine block, preparing it for the cylinder head's return. The work was meditative, repetitive, soothing in its simplicity. Dale saw her truck and waved her in. She grabbed the cylinder head from the passenger seat. It had taken her until 2 in the morning to get it fully removed, and carried it inside. The shop smelled like hot metal and cutting oil, a scent that had always been strangely comforting to Maya. It reminded her of her father's garage, of Saturday mornings spent learning to rebuild carburetors while the radio played classic rock and her father hummed along, his hands moving with the confidence of decades of practice. "Lord have mercy," Dale said when she set the cylinder head on his workbench. "This is from that dead cat at Murphy's, isn't it?" "Yeah. Heard you made some kind of crazy bet with Rick. Whole county's talking about it." He pulled out a magnifying glass and examined the crack. "Jesus, Maya, this thing ran like this for months, didn't it? At least. Whoever was operating it should have known something was wrong. The performance would have been terrible, oil pressure all over the place, overheating, loss of power. They knew. They just didn't care, or didn't want to deal with the repair cost." Dale shook his head. "That's how you kill a good machine. Neglect. It's slower than a crash, but just as fatal." He ran his thick fingers along the damaged metal, feeling the warping, assessing the depth of the crack. He was in his 60s, built like a fireplug, with a white beard that made him look like a biker Santa Claus. His hands were scarred and calloused, marked by decades of working with hot metal and sharp edges. "This can be welded, but it ain't going to be easy, and it might not hold. I know. Even if I get a good weld, that engine's been running contaminated for who knows how long. Could have damage everywhere. Bearings, camshaft, oil pump. You could fix this head and still have a dead engine." "I'm aware of that too." He looked at her for a long moment. "You really think you can get that machine running?" Maya met his eyes. "I have to." Dale nodded slowly. He understood. Everyone in this county understood what desperation looked like. "Tell you what, I'll do the weld for $400, and you can pay me the other $4 when you get your money from Murphy. If you get it. And if I don't, then we'll work something out. I ain't gonna take your truck or nothing like that. I know Rick Murphy, he's a hard man, but he's fair. If you get that cat running, he'll pay you. That's worth betting on." Maya felt her throat tighten. She'd gotten so used to fighting that kindness felt almost alien. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come back in 4 hours and pick this up. And Maya, you might want to get some sleep. You look like hell." She paid him the $400, nearly emptying her account, and drove back to the Murphy construction yard. The sun was just coming up, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. The temperature was already climbing toward what the radio promised would be another 95-degree day. It was 7:30 when she pulled up, and the day crew was arriving. Trucks rolling through the gate, men greeting each other with handshakes and jokes, the daily ritual of starting work. Brad Murphy was there, phone out again, filming as she parked. Of course they were. Polk County had 11,000 people spread across 230 square miles. News traveled fast when there was nothing else to talk about. Dale examined the crack, running his thick fingers along the damaged metal. He was in his 60s, built like a fire plug, with a white beard that made him look like a biker Santa Claus. This can be welded, but it ain't gonna be easy, and it might not hold. I know. Even if I get a good weld, that engine's been running contaminated for who knows how long. Could have damage everywhere. I'm aware of that, too. He looked at her for a long moment. You really think you can get that machine running? Maya met his eyes. I have to. Dale nodded slowly. He understood. Everyone in this county understood what desperation looked like. Tell you what, I'll do the weld for $400, and you can pay me the other $4 when you get your money from Murphy, if you get it. And if I don't, then we'll work something out. I ain't gonna take your truck or nothing like that. I know Rick Murphy. He's a hard man, but he's fair. If you get that cat running, he'll pay you. That's worth betting on. Maya felt her throat tighten. She'd gotten so used to fighting that kindness felt almost alien. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come back in 4 hours and pick this up. And Maya, you might want to get some sleep. You look like hell. She paid him the $400, nearly emptying her account, and drove back to the Murphy construction yard. It was 7:30 now, and the day crew was arriving. Brad Murphy was there, phone out again, filming as she pulled up. Day 2, he announced to the camera. Let's see if she's made any progress. Day 2, he announced to the camera. Let's see if she's made any progress, or if she's ready to give up and hand over those truck keys. Maya ignored him and walked to the Bulldozer. In the morning light, with the cylinder head removed, the engine looked like a patient mid-surgery, all its vulnerabilities exposed. She'd covered the opening with a top to keep out dust, but now she pulled it back and began inspecting the cylinder walls with a flashlight and a bore gauge. They were scored. Not terribly, but enough that the pistons would need to be replaced or at least re-ringed. She'd known this was likely, but seeing it confirmed made her stomach sink. Pistons for a Detroit diesel weren't something you could pick up at AutoZone. She'd need to order them, and they'd take at least 2 days to arrive. She didn't have 2 days. She had less than 60 hours. A shadow fell across her work. She looked up to find Tommy Rodriguez standing there, one of the older crew members, maybe 55, with gray hair and a face weathered by years of outdoor work. He'd been with Murphy Construction for 20 years and had never said more than 2 words to Maya since she started. Those cylinder walls are scored, he said, peering into the engine. I know. You're gonna need new pistons. Or I can hone the cylinders and install new rings. It won't be perfect, but it'll work. Tommy considered this. That's a lot of honing. 6 cylinders? That's hours of work. I've got hours. You done that before? Honing cylinders on a diesel this size? Maya looked at him. I've rebuilt a 6.7 Cummins, 2 different John Deere 6s, and an International DT466. This is bigger, but the principle's the same. Tommy nodded slowly. My granddaughter wants to be a mechanic. She's 16. Her daddy, my son, tells her it's not a job for girls. I keep telling him he's wrong, but he don't listen. He paused. I'm going to tell her about you, about this, about what you're doing here. He walked away before Maya could respond, leaving her standing there with the bore gauge in her hand, feeling something unexpected and warm in her chest. She went back to work. The cylinder walls had to be perfect. No high spots, no low spots, no variation that would allow the piston rings to fail. She used a spring-loaded hone, working each cylinder methodically, stopping every few minutes to measure with the bore gauge, checking and rechecking until the walls were smooth and uniform. By 10 a.m. she was drenched in sweat. The temperature had hit 90 degrees, and working inside the engine compartment was like being in an oven. She drank water constantly, emptying bottle after bottle, but it didn't help. The heat was relentless. Problem? Connor Murphy had appeared at her elbow. Unlike his brother, he wasn't filming, he was just watching, with what looked like genuine curiosity in his eyes. Nothing I can't work around, Maya said, though she wasn't sure that was true. You sleep at all last night? Some. Liar. He pulled out a thermos from his jacket. Coffee, black. You look like you need it more than me. Maya hesitated. In the 6 months she'd worked here, Connor had never offered her anything. He'd never been cruel like Brad, but he'd never been kind either. He'd simply existed in a middle space, acknowledging her presence without really seeing her. She took the thermos. The coffee was hot and strong, and she felt it hit her system like a restart button. Thanks. Don't mention it. Connor studied the exposed engine, his expression thoughtful. He had grease under his own fingernails. Unlike his brother, he actually worked on equipment regularly. You really think you can fix this? Honestly? I don't know, but I'm gonna try. Why? I mean, I get that $6,000 is decent money, but risking your truck, that seems extreme. Maya took another drink of coffee, stalling. How could she explain to this man, who'd probably never worried about money a day in his life, what it felt like to be her, to be one emergency away from homelessness, to see your daughter once every 2 weeks because you couldn't afford the legal fees to fight for more custody? It's not just about the money, she finally said. It's about proving I belong here, that I'm not just a token, a diversity hire, that I can do this job as well as any man you've got. Connor was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I never thought you were a diversity hire. Your brother did. My brother's an idiot. He said it matter-of-factly without heat. Look, I'm not supposed to help you. Dad made that clear. This is your bet, your challenge, but I'm also not going to stand in your way. You need something from the parts inventory. You take it. I'll mark it down as shop supplies. Why would you do that? Connor looked uncomfortable, like he was about to say something he'd been holding back for a while. Because I'm tired of watching good mechanics get passed over because they don't fit the mold. And because, between you and me, I think those Chattanooga guys didn't try very hard. They took Dad's money and ran. He paused. And maybe because my wife keeps telling me I need to be a better man. She's got opinions about how we treat the women who try to work here. You're married? 8 years, Rachel. She's a civil engineer, works for the state. Every time I come home and tell her about something that happened at the yard, she asks me what I did about it. And usually the answer is nothing. She doesn't like that answer much. Maya found herself smiling despite the situation. She sounds smart. She is. Smarter than me, for sure. He nodded toward the engine. Those cylinder walls are scored, but they're not terrible. You could probably get away with just honing them and putting in new rings. Won't be perfect, but it'll run. Honing them will take hours. Then you'd better get started. He pointed toward the main shop building. There's a cylinder hone in the 3rd bay, Porter cable with the spring-loaded stones. It's old, but it works. And Maya, don't tell anyone I told you that. If my brother asks, you figured it out yourself. He started to walk away, then turned back. And for what it's worth, I hope you pull this off. I really do. He disappeared into the main building, leaving Maya standing there with the thermos, watching his retreating back. She felt something shift inside her, not trust exactly, but maybe the beginning of it, the sense that not everyone here was against her. Maya stood there for a moment, holding the thermos, watching Connor Murphy's back as he headed toward the main building. Then she finished the coffee, set the thermos aside, and went to find that cylinder hone. By the time she returned to Dale's machine shop at 11:30, she'd honed all 6 cylinders and was covered in a fine metallic dust that made her look like a ghost. Dale had the cylinder head ready, the crack sealed with a beautiful, precise weld that looked like silver scar tissue. Best I could do, he said. Test it before you install it. Fill it with water. See if it leaks. Maya did. The weld held. She paid Dale, thanked him again, and drove back to the yard with the repaired head on the passenger seat. The afternoon was brutal. The temperature hit 98 degrees, and working inside the engine compartment felt like being slow roasted. Maya drank water constantly and kept working. New piston rings, carefully installed, cylinder head bolted back in place, torqued to exact specifications. Oil system flushed 3 times until the fluid ran clear. By 8 p.m., the engine was back together. Now came the electrical system. The battery was dead, but that was simple. She pulled the battery from her truck, another gamble, since she'd need it to drive home if this all failed, and installed it in the Bulldozer. The wiring was a rat's nest of corroded connections and frayed insulation. She spent 2 hours tracing circuits, cleaning terminals, replacing sections of wire. The yard lights came on as darkness fell. Rick Murphy appeared again, this time with 2 cups of coffee from the gas station down the road. He handed her one without saying anything, just stood there watching her work. "You know you're insane, right?" he finally said. "Been told that before." "I mean it. Even if you get this thing started, there's no guarantee it'll run for more than 5 minutes. Could throw a rod. Could catch fire. Could work perfectly," Maya interrupted. "Could prove everyone wrong." Rick sipped his coffee. "You got a daughter, don't you? I remember from your application." Maya's hands paused on the wire she was stripping. "Emily, she's 13. She with you?" "She's with her father in Knoxville." "That must be hard." "It is." "This about her? Getting her back?" Maya set down her tools and looked at him directly. "It's about being able to afford a place where she can have her own room. It's about not living paycheck to paycheck. It's about showing her that her mother isn't a quitter, that when people say you can't do something, you prove them wrong." Rick nodded slowly. "My wife left me 20 years ago, took the kids to Atlanta, said I cared more about this company than I did about them. She wasn't wrong." He paused. "I built this whole thing from nothing. 1 truck, 1 crew. Now I got 40 employees and 12 million in equipment, but I lost my family doing it. You got a chance to not make that mistake. Only if I can afford to keep fighting. $6,000 ain't gonna solve all your problems." "No, but it's a start." Rick finished his coffee and crushed the cup in his hand. "You got about 38 hours left. I'm rooting for you, even though I'll lose my bet." "That probably doesn't mean much, but I wanted you to know." He walked away, leaving Maya alone with the Bulldozer and the growing pile of replaced parts. She worked until midnight, until her hands were shaking from exhaustion and she couldn't focus anymore. Then she stumbled to the office, collapsed on the cot Connor had set up for her, and was asleep in seconds. She dreamed of engines that wouldn't start, of her truck being towed away, of Emily's face when Maya explained she couldn't afford the custody lawyer after all. She woke at 5 a.m., her phone alarm screaming in the darkness. Day 3 was beginning. This was it, her last chance. The hydraulic system was bleeding from 17 different points when Maya discovered the real problem at 6:30 in the morning. She'd been so focused on the engine that she'd treated the hydraulics as secondary, something to fix after she got the heart beating again. But as she traced the lines from the pump to the blade controls, she found something that made her blood run cold. The main hydraulic pump had a crack in its housing, not from age or wear, but from impact. Someone had hit it with something heavy, maybe during a previous repair attempt, and the crack had been hidden under 3 years of accumulated grime and a badly applied patch of epoxy. This wasn't fixable. This needed a complete replacement, and a new hydraulic pump for a D8 would cost $4,000 minimum with a 3-week lead time. Maya sat down hard on the Bulldozer's track, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Around her, the Murphy construction yard was coming to life, trucks starting, men shouting to each other, the normal sounds of a workday beginning. But for Maya, everything had just ended. She'd done the impossible with the engine. The cylinder head repair had held. The pistons were seated properly. The electrical system was sound. She'd tested everything twice, triple-checked every connection. The engine was ready to start, but without hydraulics, the machine was useless. A bulldozer that couldn't raise or lower its blade was just an expensive paperweight. Brad Murphy appeared, phone out as always. "Morning, day 3, the big day." He was almost gleeful. "You planning to start it up soon? Dad wants to be here when you try." Maya didn't answer. She was staring at the cracked pump housing, her mind racing through options. Could she weld it? No. The pressure would blow any weld apart in seconds. Could she patch it better than the previous attempt? Maybe, but it would fail eventually, probably catastrophically. Could she admit defeat? Her phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Mom, can I come stay with you this weekend? Dad's girlfriend is being weird." Maya closed her eyes. Her daughter needed her, needed a home, needed stability, needed a mother who could provide more than apologies and broken promises. She stood up. "Where's the nearest cat dealer?" she asked Brad. "Knoxville, about an hour north." "Why?" "I need a hydraulic pump, now." Brad lowered his phone. "Are you serious? Those cost thousands of dollars." "I'm aware. And they won't have one in stock. They'll have to order it. Then I'll make them find one." She was already walking toward her truck when Connor appeared from the main building. "Maya, wait, what's wrong?" She told him about the pump. His face fell. That's not something you can fix in a day. Those pumps are specialized, expensive. I don't even know if—" "Watch me." But even as she said it, Maya felt doubt creeping in. The hydraulic pump was the machine's circulatory system. Without it, nothing worked, and finding a replacement in less than 12 hours was borderline impossible. She climbed into her truck that might not be hers much longer, and started the engine. Connor ran up to the window. "Maya, wait. Let me make some calls. I know people. I don't have time for calls. I need action. At least let me come with you." She looked at him. His offer was genuine, she could tell, but this was her fight, her bet. "No, but thank you." She drove to Knoxville with her truck running on fumes. She'd spent so much on the cylinder head repair that she'd barely had money for gas. The fuel gauge sat just above empty, and she calculated distances in her head, wondering if she'd make it there and back. The trip felt longer than an hour. Every minute that ticked by was a minute she couldn't afford to lose. She pushed the truck faster than she should have, weaving through morning traffic, running yellow lights, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. What if the dealer didn't have a pump? What if they couldn't find one? What if she'd come this far, done this much, and failed because of one broken part? The cat dealer sat off Highway 75, a sprawling complex of warehouses and service bays. Maya pulled in at 8:15, later than she'd hoped, and practically ran to the parts counter. She drove to Knoxville with her truck running on fumes. She'd spent so much on the cylinder head repair that she'd barely had money for gas, and reached the cat dealer at 8:15. The parts manager, a woman named Sharon with short gray hair and suspicious eyes, listened to Maya's story and shook her head. "We don't stock pumps for D8s. Too expensive to keep on hand. I can order one, but it'll take 2 weeks. I don't have 2 weeks, I have 11 hours. Then I don't know what to tell you." Maya felt desperation clawing at her chest. "Is there anywhere else? Anyone who might have one? A salvage yard, another dealer, anything?" Sharon hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "There's a guy in Crossville, Jack Hendricks, runs a heavy equipment salvage operation. He's got stuff from all over. If anyone has a D8 pump sitting around, it'd be him." She wrote down a number and address. "Tell him Sharon sent you, and don't let him charge you more than $1,500. He's a good old boy, but he'll price gouge if he thinks he can get away with it." Crossville was another 45 minutes west. Maya made the drive in 35, pushing her truck faster than she should have, constantly checking her phone for the time. 10:30, 10:45, 11 o'clock. Each minute felt like an hour. The fuel light came on as she crossed into Cumberland County. She ignored it. The truck would make it or it wouldn't. Right now, that was the least of her problems. Jack Hendricks's salvage yard looked like a graveyard for giants. Bulldozers, excavators, loaders and graders in various states of decay sat in long rows, slowly being reclaimed by weeds and rust. Some looked like they'd been sitting there for decades, their yellow paint faded to the color of old bones, their windows broken out, their tracks frozen in place. The office was a single-wide trailer with a Confederate flag sticker fading on the door. A dog, some kind of pit bull mix, lay on the wooden steps, panting in the heat. It raised its head when Maya approached, but didn't bark. Maya's stomach tightened. She'd dealt with men like Jack Hendricks before, men who looked at a woman and saw either a customer to rip off or something to harass, sometimes both. Men who wore their prejudices like badges of honor, who treated the Confederate flag as heritage instead of hate, who thought the world was going to hell because it was changing in ways they didn't understand or like. But she didn't have a choice. This was her only option. She climbed the steps. The dog sniffed her hand, but didn't move, and pushed open the door. The inside of the trailer was dim and cluttered, parts catalogues stacked on every surface. A desk buried under invoices and receipts, the smell of old coffee and cigarette smoke. Jack Hendricks was exactly what she'd expected, late 60s, overweight, wearing a stained Budweiser t-shirt and boots that had probably been white once. He was sitting behind the desk, feet up, watching a small TV that was showing some kind of fishing show. He looked her up and down when she walked in, and his smile showed teeth yellowed by tobacco. Maya felt her skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. "Help you?" His voice was rough, like someone who'd smoked 2 packs a day for 50 years. "Sharon from the Knoxville cat dealer sent me. I need a hydraulic pump for a D8. She said you might have one." "Might?" He didn't move his feet from the desk. "What year?" 2008, Model 8T. He chewed on his bottom lip, thinking, or pretending to think, "I might have something that'll work. Question is, what's it worth to you?" Here it comes, Maya thought. Sharon said 1,500 would be fair. Jack laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. "Sharon's thinking of old prices. Demand's gone up, supply's gone down. D8 pumps are hard to find. I'm thinking 3,000. "I don't have 3,000. Maya felt anger rising, but pushed it down. Getting emotional wouldn't help. "I can give you 1,700. That's literally every dollar I have in the world." "Then I guess you don't get a pump." He reached for a can of Coke on his desk, took a sip, his eyes never leaving her. "Unless you want to work something else out." The way he said it made Maya's skin crawl. She knew exactly what he was implying. "No," she said flatly. 1,700 cash. That's the offer. Jack's expression darkened. "You come into my shop, asking for favors, and then you get an attitude." "I don't think so, sweetheart. I'm not your sweetheart, and I'm not asking for favors. I'm offering you $1,700 for a part you probably paid $500 for. That's good profit. Maybe I don't want to sell it to you." They stared at each other. Maya felt time slipping away. Every second she stood here was a second she wasn't installing the pump, wasn't finishing the bulldozer, wasn't winning her bet. But she'd be damned if she'd let this man intimidate her. "You're that woman from Murphy's, ain't you?" Jack said suddenly. "The one who bet her truck she could fix that dead cat." "That's me. Whole county's talking about it. Most folks think you're crazy." He studied her with new interest. "Why'd you do it, make a bet like that?" "Because I had to." "Had to? Nobody has to bet their truck on fixing a broken machine." "You don't know what I have to do." Jack leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. "My daughter tried to be a mechanic once, 20 years ago. Got a job at a Ford dealership in Nashville. Lasted 3 months before they drove her out. Sexual harassment, mostly. Made her life hell until she quit." He paused. "She's a nurse now. Makes good money. But she still talks about those 3 months like they were the worst of her life." Maya wasn't sure what to say to that. She'd expected hostility, not this. I'm sorry that happened to her. Yeah, well, world's a tough place for women doing men's work. Or so they keep telling me. He dropped his feet to the floor with a thud. Tell you what, 1,700, and you let me come watch when you start that machine. I want to see if you can pull it off. Deal. Maya returns to Murphy Construction with a working hydraulic pump she bought by emptying her savings, leaving her with just $73. $42 and less than 7 hours to finish the job. A crowd gathers to watch what many see as the end of her impossible bet. With Rick, Connor, and Brad's help, Maya installs the pump, working with relentless focus while Brad records everything. At the final moment, the bulldozer initially fails to start, but then the engine roars to life. The hydraulics work perfectly, and the crowd erupts in celebration. For the first time in years, Maya feels genuine pride. Rick honors the bet, pays her $6,000, and offers her a permanent position as lead mechanic with full benefits, admitting he was wrong to underestimate her. Maya accepts the job. She immediately pays back her debts, hires a custody lawyer, and begins searching for a better home for herself and Emily. 3 months later, with her truck returned and her life stabilizing, she drives to pick up Emily, this time knowing it's no longer just for a weekend. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who'd taken one look at Maya's situation and declared it fixable, had successfully argued for increased custody. The judge had been impressed by Maya's new job, her stable income, her 2-bedroom apartment. Emily would be with her every other week now. Full weeks. Not just weekends, a real shared custody arrangement. Maya had cried in the courthouse parking lot when the decision came through, cried like she hadn't cried in years, tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming joy. The apartment was in a better part of Cleveland, in a complex that had been built 5 years ago and still looked new. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen with appliances that actually worked. $950 a month, which would have been impossible on her old salary, but was manageable now. She'd rented it 2 weeks after getting the job offer and had spent every spare moment making it perfect for Emily. Emily's bedroom had fresh paint, a soft lavender that Emily had picked out from color samples, new furniture from IKEA that Maya had assembled herself, a desk for homework, a bookshelf already filling up with Emily's favorite novels, posters on the walls of bands Maya had never heard of and didn't understand, but approved of anyway because they made Emily happy. When Emily climbed into the truck outside her father's house, she hugged Maya tight, tighter than usual, like she was afraid to let go. "Mom, everyone at school is talking about you. They saw the video online." "What video?" "Of you starting the bulldozer. Brad Murphy posted it on YouTube. It's got like 500,000 views." Maya pulled out her phone and searched. Sure enough, there it was. Woman starts impossible dead bulldozer, full story. The video was 12 minutes long. Brad had edited together footage from all 3 days, showing Maya working on the engine, installing parts, the final moment when the machine roared to life. The thumbnail showed her in the cab, grease-stained and exhausted and triumphant. The view count read 687, 342. Comments scrolled past. "This is incredible. She's a beast. This is what determination looks like. Someone hire this woman. My daughter wants to be a mechanic now, and I'm sending her this video." This made me cry. The way she refused to give up. This is what it means to be a professional. Someone already had hired her. "Are you famous now?" Emily asked, half joking. "God, I hope not." But Maya was smiling. She handed the phone back to Emily. "Fame's overrated. I'd rather just be your mom." Emily's eyes got wet. "I'm proud of you." Maya had to pull over. She put the truck in park right there on a residential street in Knoxville and pulled Emily into a hug. They sat there for 5 minutes, holding each other, not saying anything because nothing needed to be said. When they finally pulled apart, Emily wiped her eyes and laughed. "Sorry, I'm being emotional. You're allowed to be emotional. Dad's girlfriend says I'm too sensitive. Dad's girlfriend is wrong." They drove to Cleveland, and Emily talked about school. She was getting A's in math and science, but struggling with English, hated her PE teacher, had a crush on a boy named Tyler, who sat behind her in history class. Normal, 13-year-old stuff. The kind of stuff Maya had been missing for too long. The apartment was warm when they arrived, the air conditioning working perfectly. Emily walked through it slowly, touching everything, claiming the space as hers, her bedroom, her bathroom shelf, her section of the refrigerator. "This is really mine?" she asked, standing in the doorway of her lavender room. "This is really yours. I can decorate it however I want." "However you want." Emily threw her arms around Maya again. Thank you for not giving up." That evening, after they'd moved Emily's stuff into her room and ordered pizza and watched a movie on Maya's small TV, there was a knock at the apartment door. Connor Murphy stood there, holding a housewarming gift wrapped in newspaper comics. A framed photo of Maya in the Bulldozer cab, taken just after she'd gotten it running. In the photo, she was grinning, one hand raised in triumph, the D8's engine rumbling behind her. "Thought you might want this," he said. "Figured it deserves a place on your wall." "Thank you." She invited him in, and he stayed for dinner, leftover pizza reheated in the oven. He and Emily hit it off immediately, bonding over a shared love of terrible puns and arguing about whether Star Wars or Star Trek was better. After putting Emily to bed, Maya talks with Connor on the balcony and learns that Brad has taken down his sexist video, apologized publicly, and even wants to learn from her. Influenced by his wife Rachel, Brad and Connor's father have begun changing their attitudes, hiring more women and planning mentorship programs. Maya reflects on how close she came to losing everything when she bet on fixing a broken bulldozer, and why some risks are worth taking, even when failure is possible. The next day, Maya takes Emily to see the restored D8 bulldozer she brought back to life. Sitting together in the cab, Emily thanks her mother for not giving up and for showing her that impossible often just means no one has tried hard enough yet. Inspired, Maya considers starting a blog or channel to encourage other women in male-dominated trades who are reaching out to her for hope. Back at work on Monday, Maya learns the bulldozer has become a legend, with contractors offering to buy it. Rick Murphy refuses, telling her the machine is hers. It exists because of her skill and determination. As she prepares the D8 for a new job, Maya realizes she didn't just win a bet or save a machine. She reclaimed her confidence, her career, her place as a mother, and the respect of others. By the end, Maya stands as a symbol of change, proof that persistence can transform lives, challenge old assumptions, and turn the impossible into reality.